Hey, you. Yes, you. You like dinosaurs, right? Of course, you wouldn't have clicked on the video or any of my channel if you didn't. But don't you wish dinosaurs were still around today? No, don't look outside. Don't look outside. Ignore those. But don't you wish the cool ones were around today? Well, that is the thing that we're going to be solving today in my new series of finding random bits of stock footage and putting prehistoric life into it. So, for today's video, we have this bit of stock footage. Wow, isn't it lovely? And we are going to be adding the objectively best dinosaur, Tyrannosaurus rex, into this scene. So, without further ado, let's get started. So the first order of business is grabbing my T-Rex model that I've been working with for quite some time. It's just a modified version of the Jurassic Park T-Rex from Jurassic World Evolution 2. Now to chuck our footage into Blender and get to motion tracking. Now I am doing a clip instead of doing the entire scene because frankly I didn't want to deal with the motion track. This is actually a terrible, terrible shot for motion tracking because it's dark and there's not a lot of detail that you're catching because it's dark, and it's moving in such a way that you're losing a lot of the tracking points you would have. And maybe I'm just not the best VFX artist out there. I'm not. That's a lie. I am the greatest. Here's my Academy Award. But when you're doing motion tracking, you want to make sure that you have a decent amount of track points that stay throughout the entire scene. And with this, I just didn't really have that. So instead of just doing simple 10 seconds of it, and I probably could have made my timeline longer, and that probably would have made things, a little easier, or I could have tried tracking even further, but nevertheless, now time to set up our tracking scene, and here we go. You could see it in the top right corner, just trying to line up the floor with the floor, and trying to get all of this going. And I think I've got a pretty decent track right here. You can get a good look at how it's all going. Now just scale that up and bring in the models. So there we have it. Our T-Rex is set, but there is the issue of trees. Now, this is a very, very complicated scene in terms of what will be obstructing the T-Rex. So I try to do something, but I am terrible, and I mean terrible, at modeling in Blender. So you're going to see me try and get these cylinders and turn them into basically cutouts for the trees. But these trees have ivy on them. So what would have been easier is if I properly rotoscoped them or properly keyed them out, but that also would have taken a lot of time that I simply didn't want to devote to this 10-second clip. So here we go in doing this the worst possible way. And soon I'm going to be figuring out that this was a bad idea and just kind of completely replace the trees. But we'll get to that point when we get to that point. So for now, just watch as we're setting up the scene, trying to put the trees in generally a place that I think they would be. Now, this is easier if I'm actually, recording my own plates and I'm on set, so I know how far away the things should be from the actual camera. But here I'm just kind of eyeballing it and realizing that it's too far away, so because of parallax, the trees end up just not working at all because they're too far, so I need to bring them much closer. So here we go. This was the worst possible way to do it. I should not have been... Well, one, I should have used better footage, but I really liked how this shot looked. And so that's where I was going for. And you could see, because of my terrible distance management, the trees are all kind of just getting messed up, just really messed up. And it's just kind of ruining the whole track. So, well, it's not ruining the track, it's just ruining the look. And pretty soon I'm going to figure out, oh wait, there's ivy on the trees, and they aren't just flat cylinders. And so I'm just going to abandon this method entirely because when you're doing motion tracking and rebuilding your digital environment, it's probably best not to have crazy detailed stuff in front of you that you'll have to key out. But anyways, this is me giving it the good old college try, and I think I did pretty decent for what I'm doing. But now to add a little bit of the background. So we're going to add the footage in, and we're going to be basically making our HDRI, but it's not an HDRI. Instead, it is what I'll call a false HDRI. I'm sure real people have a term for it as well, but basically I'm just going to be taking the image and plugging it into the HDRI so that we can kind of get a sense of the lighting all around. Now, there are lots of problems with doing it this way. For instance, it'll make any reflections just not look right. But for getting a general sense of the light before going in to tweak it with some actual like sun lamps and point lights, etc., this is not a bad way to do it. So yeah, there we are. Just, checking everything in, realizing that the trees are tracked wrong because I was a fool. But yeah, eventually I'll figure out a different way to do the trees. But we move on to animation. Now, this T-Rex I have. The original rig was by Frontier because it is a port from Jurassic World Evolution. But in terms of the control handles and everything, I did all that myself. So I added the IK, I added some constraints onto the jaw so it moves properly. There's one thing that I don't have fully down when it comes to the constraints and everything, and that's the feet, because they move with the IK, and that's great. But sometimes they get a bit finicky when, things move, right? So just adding in our first poses, I'm thinking for this scene, I want the T-Rex to be sniffing around, having a nice little time, and then maybe having it yawn or roar towards the camera. I'm saying this like I haven't already animated the whole thing, but that was kind of the idea. Just kind of have it be chilling and, yeah, very limited animation. Nothing super crazy. I'm just going to be mostly moving around the neck and the head and a bit of the torso down there. So I'm only using a couple of bones. If this was a more intricate animation where we weren't at such a wide angle and I would need to be more closer up, then I would use more of those other bones. But in the meanwhile, I'm just using one for the neck, one for the head, one for the spine, the root bone, which, kind of controls a bit of everything, and just one bone for the tail. Now, that one bone for the tail does do quite a lot of work. I have it as kind of a driver for the entire thing, so I only need to worry about one bone at a time for the entire tail, which has its benefits and its drawbacks, as you can kind of see here. Because when I'm animating the tail, sometimes it'll rotate in funny ways that I don't particularly like, but that's just the way it is. Now, here I make a fun little mistake. I was trying to retime everything, but I forgot to select all my bones. So I foolishly spent so long just retiming the neck motion. And I was like, why is everything going around so crazy and so fast? But the answer was very simple. The answer was because I didn't select all my bones to work on retiming everything, which, that's always fun. So a little bit more animation, just, this stuff is all pretty self-explanatory. If you like watching the process, then, congrats. When it comes to animation, I'm basically exclusively have worked with the models from Jurassic World Evolution, as you could probably tell by my documentary and then a few other things, because they're already made, they're rigged, and then I just make a few model tweaks, make them look a little bit more scientifically accurate, little tweaks like that. It's honestly it's not my favorite process in the world. I love animation. I don't like modeling. I don't like rigging. I find that stuff to be kind of tedious, but that's mostly because I'm not good at it. But the animation part itself is something that I really enjoy. So I usually just grab these models that are already made and go from there. So that's kind of what I've been doing. If you want an idea of how do you get these models from Jurassic World Evolution, it's the same process in which modders extract the models and everything. So it's if you look up some modding tutorials, you'll find how to extract the models from the game and bring them into Blender. The modding community for Jurassic World Evolution is great. It's not a lot of people doing animation or a lot of people doing 3D artistry with the models and everything. So far, the only other creator I've seen that does this is My Life with Monsters. And they do a lot of cool stuff, and they've done some thumbnails and things, and that's actually how I got into this particular aspect of, using the Jurassic World models. Now, doing a little bit of starting a walk cycle. Now, for doing dinosaur walk cycles, the best reference that you can possibly get is there was a study long ago where they took a chicken and put a plunger on the back of it, and that basically simulated a dinosaur tail. And that's pretty great reference for if you're doing dinosaur walk cycles and you want to know how they move. That video is pretty good. You can just find it on YouTube. Just look up "chicken walks like a dinosaur," and it's a good reference for if you're doing dinosaur motion. Something that I like to animate when I do dinosaur walk cycles is that sort of head bob that you get with chickens and you get with other birds when they walk around. I live in an area that has a lot of seagulls, so I've seen my fair share of dinosaurs running around. So I've got a pretty decent grasp on how they move, or at least I like to think that. So just hopping into the viewport, taking a look at what the animation looks like in its entirety, and just making a few minor tweaks to this walk cycle starting point so that it looks a little smoother, because right now it's a bit jank. Now to add the breathing. I have this, the models from Jurassic World Evolution have this breathing, I guess, thing of bones. And what I've done is basically just paired all of them together and turned them into one control handle, so I can just basically make it breathe as I want it to. I probably should pair that with the nostrils or parent it to the nostrils, but I simply just haven't gotten around to doing the nostrils or any of that, because I think that that's just a lot of work for something that you pretty much never see. But I'll probably make some adjustments to my T-Rex rig and, go from there. But in the meanwhile, just making those little adjustments, adding that little bit of a head bob that I love so much when I do bird animations. So basically, when the chest comes up, the neck goes down. When the neck goes up, the chest goes down, and then the head just kind of like goes forward. It's hard to explain, but I like animating T-Rex walk cycles like giant chickens, and you can kind of see it with that posture. And it's kind of giving Phil Tippett Phil Tippett for Jurassic Park. They did some animation tests, and their T-Rex is very chickeny how it walks. Like the way that its head bobs is much more pronounced than what we got in the final film. But yeah, just making a few adjustments, working on the eye controls and everything, so that if you could see the eyes, they'd be looking in the right way, or looking in the right places. But I think we're wide enough away that you're not going to see the eyes. Probably, but that'll be something that I figure out on the final render. So just looking at it there, and the animation looks nice, and the lighting isn't too shabby, at least I think. But I'm about to realize another issue, and that's that there is a lot of foliage in front of where the T-Rex is, and it passes in front of the model and looks really, really dumb. So the options are painstakingly rotoscope it pixel by pixel. Right now I'm matching the lighting. Or option 2 would be to replace a lot of foliage, and you'll see in a bit that I choose the latter. So I'm adding in some ginkgo trees from Jurassic World Evolution, trying to place them in approximately where I think the trees should go, trying to add a few foreground elements to make everything a little more interesting. So all of this foliage is going to end up getting moved, but just going around, my blender crashed there. But adding some bushes in to supplement the foreground elements, so that the foliage kind of blends all together. so that it's not super obvious that this is footage comped over other footage. So I'm pretty happy with how the composition's looking and everything. The trees are moving in ways that, sort of blend everything together, and just like, it's all sort of matching. And that's, pretty good. Things are going to get moved around in the final product, but, I obviously didn't record everything. So just continuing to go through, and I wanted to add a Triceratops to the foreground because I felt that the foreground was very bland. So just grabbing the Triceratops from Jurassic World Evolution and putting it in a little bit of a death pose. So widening those eyes and then having the jaw slacked open, kind of like it's fallen under its own weight, so it's not really bending in the way it should be. And then doing a little bit of work to the materials because by default it looks really flat. So I'm going to be adding a displacement node and basically just converting the normals into the displacement map or displacement node so that it has a little bit more texture to it. And when we get into render view, you can see that it's not very strong, so we just got to crank that up a lot. Also, the ambient occlusion is pretty good for adding the subsurface. The ambient, that's a neat trick that I picked up just by watching infinite Blender tutorials. And since these models have ambient occlusion maps, it's been very helpful to use those ambient occlusion textures for the sake of adding the subsurface scattering. Now I'm trying to match the lighting of the Triceratops with the surrounding foliage because right now it's extremely bright. So basically just trying to cover up external light sources because it's just looking so bright. I realized there was the default point light there, and when I got rid of that, that certainly helped with making the Triceratops blend in a little more. Moving around these walls so that they're not bumping or clipping into the camera, and I think we're almost good to go. Here's what all of the passes look like with the render, color grading, and finally the final composite. And here is the final product. And that is going to do it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.